Prince De Rola often gets mentioned in various Rolling Stones biographies as a mysterious young aristocrat who got busted with Brian Jones. Apart from the fact that he and Brian were close friends, little is known about him. A fascinating figure in the 1960s as an actor both in Europe and Hollywood, musician, fashion trendsetter, lover of some of the most beautiful women of the time, and friends with a veritable who's who of pop icons. To this day, he remains a man of wealth and taste.
The only drug of real significance, which was a big game changer, if you will, was LSD.
What was the first time that you did LSD?
That's an interesting question. I was at the house on St. Ives Drive in Hollywood, above Doheny, which we were renting, a sort of big mansion. And Chris Jones and a friend of his came over with some LSD, and they said, do you want to try this? We haven't done it, but, well, I'd read about Timothy Leary, who would later on become a very, very close friend.
Let's get back to that. I was going to ask you.
Timothy Leary, I'd read about the Tibetan Book of the Dead and his revisions of it, and what the acid experience as a mystical experience was about. So I was very keen to try it. Bobby Clark and I both tried it that night with Chris Jones and his friend as kind of monitors. Mm-hmm. But they kept plaguing us with questions. What do you feel now? What do you see? And so on and so forth.
So you were guinea pigs for Christopher Jones.
Exactly.
So let's go. How did you get closer to Tim Leary then?
I met Tim Leary in 1972 in Gstaad, Switzerland, in the Swiss Alps, and at the Palace Hotel. At the time, he was a fugitive, from the U.S. He had gone to Algeria, and he managed to get to Switzerland, and the Swiss, very much unlike the recent spate with Roman Polanski, where they had him under house arrest, and where there was the fear that he might be extradited, and the Swiss were behaving, I thought, in a disgraceful manner by sort of dropping their pans to the U.S. They defiantly told the U.S. authorities that Dr. Leary had been charged with offences that under their laws would have resulted in a mere fine and certainly not in imprisonment, and that their point of view was that they could not extradite, they could not respond to an extradition request. And Tim lived in Switzerland until he was stupid enough to respond to some invitation to go to Afghanistan, where the Afghans sold him to the DEA, and he was then put forcefully onto a plane under armed guard and taken back to the States. And what happened is we went up with a cable car to the Rigikulm, which is a mountain, and decided they wanted to go back down on foot through the other side of the mountain, which had ice and everything. And I tried in vain to dissuade them, and they said, oh, you're just scared and all that kind of thing. We're doing it anyway, and you go back down with the girls. And so I felt incumbent on me to respond to those charges by becoming a part of this near-death experience, as it turned out. I was wearing a coat given to me by one of Brian Jones's coats given to me following his death by his father had sent it to the office to give to me, and it was an Aussie Clark, sort of pinkish, a tweed coat, marvelous thing. And I was wearing this sort of things with green bell bottoms and tennis shoes and, sort of a Jimi Hendrix waistcoat and the whole, insanely poor clothes for mountaineering exercises. And we ended up very quickly being stuck on this steep descent, incapable of going to the left, to the right, returning up or going down. So we had to use one another's bodies as ropes. Eventually, to make a very long story short, we managed to get down to a level where there was a house with a Swiss-German farmer, and we wanted to call the girls to send a car to pick us up from that place, because there was, from there you could be, but he asked us where we'd come from, and when we pointed where we'd come from, he just, a look of utter and total disbelief came over him.
Did you trip at all with Leary? Or?
Yes, and I thought that tripping with Leary would be like going around the track with the world champion Formula One driver, and instead, as we took off, suddenly Leary in a panic said, "What do we do now, Stash?" It was a moment of utter panic.